everyone. Welcome. We are thrilled to have you joining us today for our panel, Inspiring the Next Generation of Women in Tech. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our panelists. For those of you tuning in, please go ahead and let us know where you're joining from. Go ahead, pop into that chat. Let us know which city you're calling in from. We'd love to see where people are joining from. While you're doing that, my name is Hannah, and I'm your moderator and a member of the Purpose Jobs team. We are your hosts today. If you're unfamiliar, Purpose Jobs is your go-to startup and tech storyteller and community builder, especially for the Midwest and emerging markets. So we're just really thrilled to have you as a member of our community. A couple of housekeeping items, mostly and chiefly just please use the chat. We can't see your faces, so we'd love to hear your voices through the chat box there, starting with letting us know where you're joining from. You can engage this way via our social media live streams. So pop over to LinkedIn, YouTube, if you're watching it on our website in order to engage that way. Throughout the conversation, we'd love for you to use the chat to, let us know if we say something that really resonates with you, to chime in with your own advice, and then to post questions during the conversation as well. And I'll work to incorporate those as we move through the discussion. Now that we've taken care of that, let's shift into today's topic. So today, I'm thrilled to be joined by a powerhouse group of women from our community. You all are going to love them. They can do it a lot better than I can, so I'm going to let them be the ones to introduce themselves here in a moment. But before they do, just wanted to share that, according to the latest statistic, women in tech only hold 26.7% of those jobs. So really letting that sink in. That's one woman for every 3 men. And today I'm just so excited because I know our panelists are really going to help, really help us have a really strong understanding of why that number is so significant, of why women in tech make such a huge difference, and why that diversity matters. So just a special thanks to all of the women tuning in, all of our supporters, and then for our panelists especially. So without further ado, we're going to get started with introductions. So to our panelists, as you introduce yourself, would love to hear a name, brief background, and then we'd love to know why you're so excited to be joining the conversation today. So Chevonne, if I can kick things over to you first, would love to hear your intro.
Yeah, so I'm Chevonne. I'm originally from Miami. I live in Detroit now. I work for Lightship. So Lightship Foundation supports, finds and funds great founders. And we do that through a lot of our programming. And as the director of projects, I like to say I help support the portfolio companies after investment. I help with any special projects. I most recently acquired Black Tech Week. So that was fantastic that we had last year. We'll be doing it again this year. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here. I felt like my journey into tech was very intentional. Like I was on a hunt to figure out how to do it. And at the time, I felt very lonely. So it is really nice to hear other people's stories and how they did it, and to hopefully give people some ideas on how they can enter into tech, especially being a non-technical person. So yeah, looking really forward today.
Amazing. Thank you, Chevonne. We're so excited to have you joining us. Julia, I'll let you jump into things next.
Cool. I'm Julia Winters, CEO and founder of Alchemie. We are oh shoot, my dog is not supposed to bark. That's why he's on my lap. Say hello, dog. So, oh, dang. You know what? I'm going to pass it to Alison and take care of my dog. Okay.
I love your dog. My name's Alison Accavitti. I'm a co-founder and the chief marketing officer at RIVET Work. We're based in Detroit, Michigan. At RIVET, we make a labor operations software platform for construction contractors. And we sell that through a B2B SaaS model. For me, though, I've worked primarily in construction and automotive industries, mostly in marketing. My passion is building underdog brands that make a positive impact. So I'm really purpose-driven and really proud to be co-founding a company in Detroit with 3 other co-founders. There I've started as the beta product designer, then shifted to sales ops, then into marketing, and I also oversee the customer success team, which are all non-tech roles in a tech world. So excited to talk more about that too.
Awesome. Thank you, Allison. Appreciate you sharing. Julia, we'll kick it back to you. Hopefully the dog is happy and settled.
The dog is up in my room in his cage. So yeah, I'm Julia Winter, CEO and founder of Alchemie. We build interactive learning tools for science, mostly in higher ed, and sell through a B2B business model. So we sell to the publishers. We're really trying to build the textbooks of tomorrow. Finally, you would think that should have been done yesterday, but we're doing that now with interactive learning tools, and we're really excited. We're also SBIR, Small Business Innovative Research, funded through the National Science Foundation and the Department of Education to make sure our tools are accessible to all learners, including those who are blind or have low vision. And we're based in Troy, and I'm really excited to talk to people about a really different journey into tech, as I was a 20-year school teacher that accidentally hopped into building learning tools 10 years ago, and I've been at it since then.
Awesome. Thank you, Julia. Appreciate you walking through that, and excited for you to share more about your journey as well. Elizabeth, I will kick things over to you.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Work from home issues. My name is Elizabeth Heaton. I'm the director of career services at Grand Circus. Grand Circus is a remote boot camp where we teach anyone to be a developer. So it doesn't matter what walk of life you came from, any background. Similar to Julia, I was a 10-year teacher prior to the pandemic, and kind of stumbled into tech as well. I'd been working as a career counselor for 10 years with children and students in the low-income cities of Chicago, and realized that tech is for everyone and it doesn't discriminate. And I really wanted to bring that to the city of Detroit, and that's what I do today.
Awesome. Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you, everyone, for doing introductions. So our next question is really, how did everyone find their way into tech? What drove your interest, or did you just fall into it like Elizabeth? And I myself happened to stumble into it accidentally as well. So Julia, would you mind kicking things off? Because I know you've got a pretty cool story to share there. Yeah. So just kind of how did you find your way into tech and into founding Alchemie?
Yeah, so I was 20 years at Detroit Country Day School, which, for those who don't know, it's a private school outside of Detroit in the suburbs. And I loved my job. What a great place. Loved it. But my kids grew up, graduated from University of Michigan. And at that time, I started a summer school. And at the end of that summer school in 2013, I said, I could make games out of my learning. And I worked with a local consulting firm to build an idea, my first idea. Well, the people from that consulting firm have ended up staying with me since then. One is my CTO and the other is my COO. We are the founders of the company. They both saw the potential for really transforming education. So we just started building and went with that. And it's been a 10-year journey. I left my teaching job in 2016 and moved from apps to web-based products to a business model where we're working with the biggest publishers in the world, in the country. And it's been just hard being a founder, a CEO and a founder. And I think as a woman, I take care of my team. So I feel very motherly, grandmotherly with my team. And that's how they treat me, which is just fine.
Awesome, Julia. Thank you so much for sharing. I just love the example of, here's an idea, here's how I can, make something fun, more engaging, better. And you just went out and did it, and it turned into something you didn't expect.
And just kept going.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Alison, can I kick it to you next?
Yeah, sure. So how did I find my way into tech? I've always loved tech, and I thought when I went to Michigan State that I would graduate with a computer science degree. I was big into networking, big into coding in high school. But ironically, I graduated in communication, and it's there at MSU that I learned that's where I have a special ability to translate technical concepts into things people can understand. And that's really guided my career. That and technology enables positive change in society generally. And I'm a very purpose-driven person. I didn't know that in work environments that mattered so much to me until just getting into it and learning that from experience. I cannot get behind a cause that I'm not just completely motivated by. And it always seems to come back to tech. So I think I've learned something I learned later in life after working, especially in corporate, is having purpose and then being around tech. That's kind of where I come together.
I love that. I was like, purpose is also very important to me, and just need to believe what I'm doing. And I think tech is so exciting because of the building that you get to do. So that's awesome, Alison. Chevonne, I'll kick things over your way.
Yeah, so I worked for Target corporate for 7, almost 8 years. And I mean, I was like red and khaki gang. You could not tell me that I wasn't going to work for Target for like the rest of my life. And I was very corporate. Like I would probably like run over my mother for a promotion. Like I was hardcore. And I got to a place after my last promotion. I moved to Portland, Oregon. This is very random, from Florida. And I got real bored. I didn't like it anymore. I really wanted to do something else. And I started hearing about, startups, and I started reading TechCrunch and all these different things. And I was like, wow, this is so exciting. So I remember saving some money. I quit my job. I bought a Nintendo Switch. I played Zelda that whole summer. And I thought to myself, like, you've got like 3 months to figure out like a job situation. And so I started attending these tech conferences, specifically like in the Pacific Northwest. And I would go straight to the job, like wherever the career fair area was. And I will tell them, hey, this is what I did with my life at Target. What would I do at this tech company? And a lot of people kept telling me like HR, which if you knew me, you knew HR was not a good place for me to go. So I kept saying like, no, I don't think that. And the last person I spoke to said, why don't you think about like being a program manager? And I was like, The very next day, I saw that there was a posting for a program manager at the Portland incubator experiments, PI, literally it's called PI. And I emailed this, the founder of it, Rick Tarowski. It might've been like 2 a.m. in the morning. I mean, I was manic at this point. I had no job. I finished Zelda, like I had nothing to do. And I was like, hey, I have no idea exactly what the tasks are, but looking at the responsibilities and what you need of that person, I feel like I can do that. And he had everything set up. He had a spot. He just did not want to actually run the incubator. He had the startups already, and he just let me kind of go wild in there. And so like, he really gave me my first shot. And after that, I realized like so much of my past has always been in service. Like I'm just naturally in hospitality. I love working for people. I love seeing something start and then finish, or an idea happen and then I implement it. And so it was then I realized, wow, I love working with founders. I love being able to watch their companies grow. I love seeing them have a problem, being able to like jump in as a temp employee, help them jump out, and then just continue doing that over and over again. And then I had a friend from many years ago, Brian Burkeen, now said, hey, I saw that you just moved to Detroit. My wife and I, by the way, I got married, Candace Matthews Burkeen, and she had an accelerator, and we're starting Lightship, and we really need someone to help support operations. And I was like, well, this is just absolutely perfect. And then that's how I ended up working with them. But I think back to the times where I had no idea the things they were saying. I specifically remember being at a meeting and they kept saying SEO. And I had this little notebook that could fit in like my back pocket. This is like 2016. And I wrote SEO question mark, question mark, question mark. It's like underlined. And I would go home. I became like a real YouTube warrior. I would just like YouTube these videos of whatever the stuff was, so that the next meeting, I knew what SEO was. And like, I just kind of kept doing that to become more comfortable, because it was kind of lonely. There was really not a lot of people to ask. I didn't want to sound stupid. And so I feel like, if you are a student of life and you don't mind learning something new, this is a great environment to be in, because you literally are constantly learning.
That's awesome, Chevonne. Thank you for sharing. That's a great mindset and just a wonderful story.
Can I just give a quick shout out for Zelda though? Love Zelda.
Yes. Have you gotten to play it again since you finished it the first time?
Yes, I have played it again because the new one is coming out at the end of May. My calendar is blocked off the whole week. Don't bother me. Don't talk to me.
Same.
We gotta beat
Same.
Ganon. We gotta beat it.
That's awesome. You two will have to connect when it comes out and talk about the game for sure.
Mhm.
Love that. Okay, Elizabeth, let's kick it over to you to share a little bit more about how you fell into tech.
So I truly did stumble into tech. I had been in the education arena. I have a counseling background. So I realized halfway through my graduate school program that individual counseling was not for me. So this is kind of like my second career pivot of life. I realized I didn't want to do individual counseling. I wanted to be in the community. I wanted to be on the ground working with individuals, regardless of what it was. I just couldn't be boxed into a room with one person. So I ended up working for Chicago Public Schools for about 10 years, working with the highest risk graduation population of students who were just kind of written off. They were written off that, well, you couldn't go to a 4-year school, so sorry about you. And I really wanted those students to know that traditional 4-year schools may or may not be for you, but there's always an opportunity for education after that. It doesn't have to be this, you go to high school, you go to college, you get a job, you retire from said job. This doesn't happen. Didn't happen for me, and that's okay. And just letting people know that there's many different opportunities to do that. So that's what I did prior to that, and then moved to the Detroit area. Pandemic hit. I'm one of the pandemic stories of really made me realize what do you want to do with your life? And I realized that, schools were burning me out. There could be more. I could do more. And powers of referral and networking, which I preach every day to all the students that we work with, really leverage those connections. Friend of a friend said, hey, we've got a spot. It's after hours. I don't know if you want it. But it really could be your opportunity to break into tech. Like Chevonne, I Googled everything. I had no tech background whatsoever. And I was just Googling everything. I took the job description line by line, was just writing down definitions, bought books. I was like, I've got this. Went into the interview and, just started after hours and just took as much information as I possibly could. I was taking intro to coding classes. I was like, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to know what people are talking about. And now I can confidently say that I do know a little bit more than I did a couple years ago. I always feel like I'm learning every single day with the students that I talk to. But really just knowing that tech can be for everybody, regardless of the background that you come from. Most of our successful students have no tech background whatsoever. They say to me all the time, Elizabeth, I've been just a server. And I tell them every single time, if you can work with the general public, you can do anything. And that's really what I leverage to them, that, tech is working with people. Can you play nicely with others? Can you work well with others? And if you can be a bartender on a busy Friday night, you can absolutely do that.
I love that comparison. Yes, I could not agree more with that sentiment. Perfect. Thank you all for sharing your stories. I always just love hearing people's journeys because when we're coming out of college or whatever that looks like, or picking whatever our major is, we don't necessarily know what route we're going to go, like what we want to do with our life. I still don't know what I want to do with my life, but it's like, how can we find those things that are really exciting? How can we, understand other people's pathways? And so just really appreciate you sharing, because so much of it is a very up and down path and lots of turns. So yes, thank you all for sharing. Okay, let's dive into the meat of the conversation now. So I want to jump into, why is having a strong presence of women in tech so important? What do we bring to the table? So yeah, let's, Alison, do you want to go first this time?
Yeah, sure. I think this is such an important question. And there's some obvious answers. It's a couple that I definitely want to hone in on, a couple points I want to make. So, I mean, just generally, the obvious answer, I think, is a more diverse workforce, whether that's gender or other factors, is better for business. Diversity brings a range of perspectives, and innovation thrives when you have more diversity. But two things that I really want to hone in on. In my personal experience, the presence of women makes others anticipate differences of opinion. And that leads to more constructive conversations And that puts everyone involved working at a slightly higher level when they're trying to be convincing. I think that results in better problem solving. I think that results in more creative solutions, and everyone is better for it afterward. And the second thing that I really want to hone in on is I think we need more female role models. Early in my career, I went looking for these and I struggled to find them. That made me sad. And it's because women were underrepresented in leadership positions. Now that I'm in a leadership position, I feel a responsibility to create a good culture for the women I work with. I make sure they sit at the table instead of on the sidelines. If they're moms, I make sure they can balance home life and help them set boundaries. I've learned how to echo what they're saying if it goes unheard so they can have a stronger voice. So yeah, I really wanted to focus on the role model piece and on just the presence of a woman in the room can really add just a different level to the dynamic.
I love everything you said, Allison. I definitely, we'll dive into some of that a little bit later more, but yeah, all of that was spot on. Chevonne, would you like to jump in next?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to talk about like problem solving. I think that the way women approach problems and kind of anticipate it, you know, sometimes I think women overanalyze things, and that overanalyzing a lot of times helps with seeing something that's going to happen, or even just seeing all these different branches of problems that like, hey, let's start tackling this. Let's start tackling this. And then you're just naturally doing it. And I don't know about everyone else, but in my experience, most of the companies I've worked at, the women always worked harder or more. They want to do more. They want to solve more problems. They want to implement more things. And then when you get them together, now that's a whole other situation. Now you're talking about like you have a plan ready to go in a day or two because they are so ready to just do and see things come to fruition. And I can even just talk about myself. Nothing brings me more joy than having a task list and then not having it. I mean, that's it. That's it. That's what makes me very happy, is being able to see that there was a problem or there was something to do, and now there isn't anything to do. And now I'm on to the next thing. And it's such a difference in how other people work and how maybe men work. But I can definitely say like more women in the workplace, the way we are able to come together to solve problems is so unique. And I don't know if you think about like some of the group projects you had back in the day, like high school or college, and there sometimes was always that one woman who was going to make sure that this was going to get done regardless of anything happening. And that's what I always think about. And then to your point, Alison, about just more role models. I mean, I just had to go into tech conferences to ask people what I would do. I didn't really know anyone who I could actually ask, hey, what do you think I would do at your tech company? It's just like showing up. And I'm very grateful for them. Like even saying HR or pointing me in a direction is still super helpful. So I think the more of us that are here, we can also help point people in a direction like, hey, I think I know exactly what you could do, because now I know Julia founder. Now I know Alison. Now I know these founders, women founders, where I think you'd be a great fit at this company. So I think also just our need to want to see other people do well. So I'm very excited to see so many more women in these positions, founders. I wish I absolutely had this, but I'm happy for them. I'm happy for the next generation and for me, because I'm sure in 5 years, I'm going to want to do something else. And someone here is going to connect me to that next thing.
Yes, I love that. Yeah, and just the energy that we can build off of one another as women. I think it's so amazing for sure. Julia, do you want to jump next?
I want to echo what Chevonne said. The interesting thing about where I've come, where I've gone, I started this company going to Mergelane, which was an accelerator just for women founded or women-led companies. And I met a group of women starting companies at different levels. But throughout this journey, the interesting piece and what Chevonne said about supporting other founders is, and I also echo what Alison said about problem solving within the team, but I think what has been a really great lesson is finding the other founders either in ed tech or tech. And we have built networks within between each other. We call each other up. How are you doing? We even work together on competing SBIR grants. Like, we didn't know how to write these grants, so we helped each other do it. Neither of us got funded that round either way, but the thing is, we supported each other as we did it. And there have been some men along the line, male founders that I've worked with at that level. But most of the time over the last, 6 to 7 years, it's finding a group of women or a single woman to support each other as we go through, as Hannah said, the ups and the downs and the ups and the downs of building a company from scratch. And so I think that has been a really great lesson learned, is finding those people, women mostly on my side, but the founders that can support you as you do that. And so I've found some great female role models, but also just mentors and supporters through this big journey.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Julia. Appreciate you sharing that. Elizabeth, let's kick it over to you.
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest things that I noticed just in the corporate professional world is being terrified to be a mom. You always go into these job interviews, and some of the questions we get asked right away in job interviews when we do student prep is, well, do I tell them about this? And do I tell them about that? And I think one of the biggest turning points of my professional career was being proud of being a mom. I am a mom of 3 kids. And let me tell you, all of the skills that I bring to the workplace are because I can manage 3 little people and make sure that we are at places on time, ready to go, and managing all of that. And I think moms bring such a unique lens to the workplace. We can balance a million things, plus go to work and still worry about everything else going on, and the job gets done. Like Chevonne said, task list, my team lives and breathes by it on a Asana board. Check those boxes off, and the little surprise at the end with you, like, that is my jam. I'm like, close it out and we are done. So I think that's something that's really great. And one of the things that I really love about my team is that it's made up of all moms. And I have a team where we celebrate each other's kids' birthdays, and we have gone the ups and the downs of the COVID pandemic and seen all of these great things transpire, and building a team that is proud to bring all facets of your life as a woman. All of the things that we go through, everything that we're experiencing, it allows us to just be transparent and authentic and not be afraid of those crucial pieces that make us awesome workers. We bring so much to the table. And I think building that and being a lens for other companies to look at and be like, they're all moms, and that's okay. Yes, my company hires parents. And that is one of the many reasons why I love working here, is because we accept you for who you are. You have kids? Awesome. Let's see them. Do you have a dog? I want to see your dog. Like, all of these things. And I think being able to have that workplace with the known of, like, this is my life and that's okay, and it's supported, is such a huge facet of, women in the workplace.
That's awesome, Elizabeth. Yeah, I think just like the element of being a mom, it really just adds to, like, the work-life balance as well. That I think is just really valuable to have and really important in this day and age, is to have that flexibility. And so, I just love that we as women can really help advocate for that as well. And to the checklist thing, I mean, I hope you all do this. Sometimes if something's missing from the checklist or there's on a board, we got to add it real quick so that we can check that off too. So yes, love the checklist. So moving next, I want to dive a little bit more into some of the specific challenges that we as women might face in tech. And I think, a little bit of what we've heard, sometimes when you're breaking into tech, you don't know what SEO or some of these other acronyms mean, or phrases. Sometimes too, I think just as being, a woman in the workforce in general, Julia, you're talking about being motherly towards your team. Chevonne, you mentioned overanalyzing at some point. I think we can all just be a little bit anxious. So, like, really, how can we, like, as it relates to challenges that we have in tech, how can we really own who we are as a woman and really bring, this femaleness as an asset into the workplace? So just curious, kind of how we can overcome, I guess, some of those those insecurities or challenges that we might be experiencing. Julia, would you like to go first on this one?
Golly, how, I've learned, one of the things I've learned is not necessarily about, as a school teacher of lots of kids, you end up trying to not hear their backstories, because if you heard their backstories all the time, you would actually get too involved. You have to be almost immune to lots of different things. And there has to be lots of water under the bridge conversations with juniors and seniors, and you have to just move on. And some of those things that were skills as a teacher are not necessarily good skills as a business person, whereas when you're pitching a bunch of investors, you actually have to see those cues that they're giving you. So I think one of the things I've had to do is learn new skills, and being able to self-reflect and say, oh, I'm not that good at that. I need to work on that. And I think that is one of the things that has helped me along this journey, is sort of have a growth mindset. I don't know everything. I mean, Chevonne might not know SEO. I didn't know what value proposition and those two words went together as a businesswoman. I figured out that some of the softer skills I might not be that good at, and I needed to start practicing them, which then helps my team, because I've learned, oh, I might not be that good at this. So I think having a growth mindset and understanding and being self-reflective of what are the skills you need to work on, both hard skills and softer skills. And I think being a woman helps you maybe understand that, maybe not. I'm a data point number one. So that's sort of one of my lessons learned in this journey. I don't know if that answered the question, but
it does. No, yeah. That's great. I mean, I think growth mindset is so critical. And just having that kind of awareness, as you're on that journey. So for sure. Thank you, Julia. Alison, can I jump to you next?
Sure. I think you can overcome insecurities almost any time with a business case. And so if you don't have one, say you need some time to work on one and come back with one. And I think you'll find power and confidence if you have supporting research. Just in my experience, everything requires a business case if you're a woman. And that's something that I learned early, is I can't make a suggestion without strong data available to support what I'm saying. And I've learned to find sponsors for my ideas if I want to make sure that they're going to even just get attention. I think another thing to not be insecure about is if you don't have a tech degree. There's a stigma that you need an engineering degree to be in tech, but the reality is there are so many roles that are non-engineering too. It's only half the battle at a company to have a strong product and a strong engineering team. You also need a good team to bring the product to market. You need a good team to sell the product. You need a good team to support the customers. So at RIVET specifically, our customer success team is our secret sauce, and they're not engineers. They are relationship builders who learn what challenges our customers have, and they help train users on our platform. So yeah, I would just encourage business cases and not to worry about being too technical. There's ways around both of those.
Love that, Alison. I think you just need good people in general. I personally, like, your college degree should not really matter. I studied geology in college. So I'm as far from that as I could get right now. So yeah, really love you highlighting that, Alison. Elizabeth, I'll let you jump in to add on.
Absolutely. So this really hits on one of the courses we teach at Grand Circus is about imposter syndrome. And I had to take the course myself this morning because I was feeling it creep in, and I was what would I tell my students? What would I say to them? And one of the biggest things is just having a role model, having somebody to look up to and a mentor to say, hey, I'm feeling this way. There's nothing more intimidating than some of the first meetings that I've had in tech, and especially in a Zoom room, when you're the only woman in a room of 10 to 15 men, and you're like, whoa, you can't even read the room because it's just Zoom opens up. So it's one of those things where you have to know, I can do this. I believe in myself. I am here for a reason. And just being able to kind of talk yourself through that mantra of knowing that you're here, you can do this. Even if you're the only woman, you're a role model for somebody out there. I really hope that one day, there's a balance of men and women in tech where it's like, we don't have to say like, oh, you need a role model in tech, because there's going to be so many of us out there. So really making sure that, we have a mentor for ourselves and let people know that we have one. I think a lot of times too that, the next generation doesn't know that we have mentors, that we struggle, that we go through all of these things every day. So really just speaking that out loud and not being afraid to share your story, to know that, yeah, of course, like there's times that I feel imposter syndrome. There's times that I don't feel nearly as confident as I should. And that's okay. And you lean on all of the skill sets you have and grow from there.
Amazing. And we're going to circle back to this mentorship topic and just like general resources in a second. But Chevonne, let me go ahead and let you jump in on just challenges and overcoming insecurities before we do that.
Yeah, I think one of the things I realized when I left Target, it was so tied to my identity, right? And the time where I wasn't working and I felt like, wow, you're not producing anything right now because you're not working. So like, what is your purpose in this life? That like, you don't also have to be producing something to be of value. And I think I had to realize like, that is not who you are. That's just what you did. Right. And so the transition of me coming out of that career and wanting to do something else and realizing like, can I do something else, also led me down a path of seeking therapy. Right. It was so tied to who I was. You have to imagine like you do something for so long, and especially, with Target, it's red and khaki. When I got rid of that in my closet was empty. It was a very visceral thing that I remember thinking to myself, like, what do I wear each day? What do I do? And therapy really helped me realize, your work is not who you are, and you can change that at any moment. That was, I think, the first thing. And then coming on the other side of it now, I have a friend, she always says to me, I don't play the radio. And part of that, what she says to me, is because now, like, I challenge living in fear. Anytime I feel like fear kind of creep up, I explore it immediately. I'm not here to mince around anymore. If I want to try to do something new, I'm going to go ahead and try something new, because what's going to happen? Like, truthfully, what is the worst thing that's going to happen? And I think that that's what you really have to face, is nothing's going to happen. It's just not going to go well. And then you move on to the next thing. And so anytime I feel like, oh, I'm nervous about this, I don't know what to do next, I'm like, why am I feeling fear around this thing? Because it's new. That's it. Only because it's new and it's uncomfortable. And the more comfortable you get with new things feeling uncomfortable, then you're soaring. Now you're really like, I'll try something else out. Why not try this out? And I feel like you start betting on you and your own talent and your own resources more than worrying about like who can help you get this thing or what you have to learn. Because no matter what, I'm going to make sure that I learn this. I'm going to make sure I find the right people, because I can bet on me. And I think like that is probably the biggest thing I've learned.
Wow. Okay. I just love everything that's happening here. We could use like 2 more hours than we actually have scheduled. Okay. Let me try and focus. One, love the therapy, and just like, I think just anything that we can do. Like, I mean, being a woman in tech is going to be challenging because, we are in the minority. So like just being able to like really do that growth work, to speak with a coach or a therapist, I think can just like really help us, do a lot of what you were just talking about there, Chevonne. So thank you, Chevonne, and everyone else for like the vulnerability that you're really sharing in this conversation, because it's so important. And I think like on the coaching side too, like, if your company doesn't like offer that resource, like, I'm really grateful that Purpose Jobs like offers that as a resource, and like it like makes a complete difference. And I think my ability to tackle the day and overcome challenges and things like that, like if that's not an offer, like maybe start advocating for that, like if that can be a benefit or if that's something that you can do, because I mean, ultimately, I think it just like, it can be really helpful in just like overcoming those challenges and just, performing better in the long run, because you just feel more confident and better about yourself. So just a huge advocate for therapy, mentorship, all of that. But let's dive into just resources. So we're getting a lot of questions about, how do we find resources? How do we find mentors? Especially if I work remote or if I'm in a smaller city, just like, how do we start to build these connections with other women in tech? How do we find these resources to support, this work that we're doing within this industry? So I know that's a big one. And some of it, you might have answers more local to Detroit, but if we have any that are more national to be accessible to those not in Detroit, or the Midwest, I think that would be really great. So I'm going to jump to Elizabeth next. If you've got anything on hand that you can talk about there.
Yeah, so I think a lot of this is more of a general idea of looking at the network and the connections that you have. Some of the biggest connections that I have are some family and friends that I didn't know worked in tech. Some of them are people of, different backgrounds that I'm like, oh, you work in tech? I didn't know you worked in tech. You didn't have an engineering degree. You don't have a degree in computer science. So really letting people know that you work in tech will start to open up those doors. And then I also start leveraging different groups and organizations that I'm personally a part of, to kind of see that. So I look to my sorority sisters and ask them, hey, do you have any network connections? And leveraging the groups. You can leverage community groups, religious organizations, different organizations that work for passions that you are passionate about, can be that mentors for you. I've also learned that having a mentor that's specifically in tech isn't sometimes really what I need. I also just need a woman who is powerful and confident and can walk into a room and know that I've got this. And that doesn't have to be in tech. That could be anybody. So really leveraging those community networks that you're personally tied to has been something that I've really leveraged just as an adult in my professional career, and going, oh yeah, like my sorority sisters, they're definitely there. And there's like a powerhouse group of women right there ready to go, and vice versa. And we just sit around and, once a month we talk to each other and it's like, okay, what'd you learn? How did you incorporate this? Oh, this happened to you at work. This happened to me too. And really just brainstorming that together. So overall, just really leveraging the community networks that you have is the best place to start.
I love that, Elizabeth. Yeah, definitely look around, what women do you have surrounding you, for sure. Alison, do you want to kick things off next?
Sure. I would recommend a co-working space, even if you're working inside of a company that doesn't need the co-working space. Just from personal experience, I've personally been working out of Bamboo Co-working in downtown Detroit since 2018. This is where I've met so many great people and watched some incredible companies grow. But what I like about it, not just Bamboo, nationally too, co-working spaces tend to host events for networking. They host professional development workshops. It's just a great place to meet really driven talent. And that's going to open doors. So I think they're a great place also just to find jobs with startups, if that's what you're interested in. But just a great networking place. Work at one once a week and put yourself out there.
I love that idea, Alison. Thank you for sharing. Chevonne, I'm going to kick it over to you next.
Yeah, I feel like I've been a transplant like 3 or 4 times in my adult life, and I have started. Let me also preface this with saying that I'm a natural extrovert, right? So it is, I don't want to say easy for me, but I don't mind going someplace alone and having to meet people. And I think that when I first left Miami, part of that was, okay, what am I interested in? And this is really old school, but like I went to like meetups. I just Googled meetups, and I would try to have a task or a goal for said meetup, because it bring about a lot of anxiety. I'm not going to know anyone. What am I going to talk about? So I would just go and say, okay, you're going to go for 30 minutes. And then just make sure you get like one phone number, like one connection. And that's all I did. So it wasn't so much pressure that I was putting on myself, but I definitely started with a lot of meetups. To Alison's point, like if I could go work someplace else, like changing my physical position where I am, I would always be in like a different coffee shop or restaurant outside. Like I definitely was putting myself in a place to kind of always meet strangers. And then this is when I really started going to conferences. This is when I truly understood like why people attend these things. And I always tried to find, like, especially at the time back then, I looked for like the unemployed tickets. I would email people if I thought the tickets were too much and say, hey, I'm newly transitioning into career. Is there another option? And I've never gotten a no. People are always, they want to help, especially if you're talking about, hey, I want to come to your conference and learn more. I think that those exponentially change things, because now you have a ton of people coming together with one common goal, usually to network, to meet other people, and you leave with a lot of new connections. And so between like meetups, changing my space, going to conferences, I really learned how to meet people. And then even transitioning after moving to Detroit, I went about it the same exact way. The only difference is I had a little bit more connections here. But yeah, I started the same way. Let me look for meetups. Let me go to conferences. What is happening local? Let me go there and just have one goal in mind. I just want to meet one person. I just want to get one network, like one connection, and then leave. And I would sometimes like treat myself like, oh, if you go to this thing, then afterwards you can go to the movies and maybe you can get ice cream. Like I'd make a whole thing of it and I would feel, super accomplished. And that really, I mean, it's draining. Let me say that it is very draining and it can be exhausting, but I think it's exciting when you're entering something new or you just need a refresh to just kind of get that energy from people of like why you're here, why you wanted to do all of this in the first place. So yeah, leverage conferences and meetups. Don't be afraid to like get out there and just like attend something by yourself.
Thank you for sharing that, Chevonne. And I think recognizing the challenges that are definitely still associated with that, because they definitely do exist. And for those of you that are in Detroit and Columbus, Purpose Jobs hosts happy hours pretty regularly there too. So, we'd also love to see you all at those. And we'll definitely continue to expand to cities over the year. But I think Chevonne shared a lot of good tips for kind of how to manage that and approach that. Julia, I'll let you close things out with just, kind of resources and mentorship for Women in Tech.
Well, I will reflect exactly what Chevonne said. Get out there. And I went to, because I'm in ed tech, and ed tech isn't a big industry, big thing in the Detroit, Michigan area. So I went to Learn Launch in Boston early, like 2017. I didn't even know what was out there. And I met people, kept their business cards, kept connected. I also applied to a number of accelerators, not just the kind of accelerators that take equity but really business networking accelerators. I was part of the WXR Venture Fund, which was for women in virtual reality, AR, VR, XR, and met amazing women through that accelerator, but it really was a program to support other women in XR technology. And so I've met people through applying for different conferences, different competitions, and most of the people I've met have come from those interactions in conferences for educational technology. So that's been super interesting. It's nationwide. And there are lots of different avenues to meet people who are in your specific area. Especially for me, it was all in ed tech.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Julia. And we have one question too about any specific conferences. So Julia, you just shared, I think, specific ed tech conferences. Chevonne, Alison, Elizabeth, any conferences that you would recommend for, that are more specific for women in tech?
Oh yeah. The one I went to in Portland, I think it was called Chicks in Tech. I believe that's what the name was. But then also while I was on the West Coast, I've been to Afrotech a few times. Clearly, I work at Lightship now, and we now run Black Tech Week last year, and we're doing it again this year in Cincinnati. Depending on like also what you're into, I've gone down to, there's a Women Talk Tech, and there's like a Men Talk Tech. They're same organization, but yeah, I can definitely send a couple as they're coming to me right now. I know I'm just kind of spewing them off, but we can get a more structured situation happening. But those are just some of the top of my head that I've been to and have like really enjoyed. And people there are also there with the intent to meet other people, because I think that kind of matters with just how's the vibe? So yeah, and then also, if you're in Detroit, please go to the happy hours that Purpose puts on. They're great. They're very seasonal, and so that's
Thanks, Chevonne. That's great.
And generically, I mean, A2 New Tech, Ann Arbor New Tech is a really, I went there, it's been a few years, but you see regulars and people pitch companies, and you see the people in there. And I think there's a D New Tech, and then there's even, I have connections in Traverse City. So there are like tech meetups in different cities that is more generic. But you also see people, coming up with ideas and bringing them to market and talking about it, and making connections there is always helpful.
I have one more. Michigan Tech Week. They started just last year, but they're coming back this year. Fantastic for all the people who are local. Now,
thanks, Chevonne.
Alison,
do you something? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Another angle on the conferences is go to one that it's either a topic you specialize in or a topic you want to develop into. So for me, marketing for a long time, the Digital Summit is a national chain of conferences. So Digital Summit Detroit is every year. I go to that and I network with a lot of like-minded marketing people. So that's another way to think about it is go, Google your specialization plus conferences. And that's a great way to just like get a pulse for what are other people doing in roles that you're either in or you want to be in. That's a great place to ask really vulnerable questions to someone like, hey, I see you're a director of marketing. I want to be a director of marketing. What did it take to get there? That's another angle to think about with conferences. Plus you come out of them having learned a ton about what you're hoping to develop into.
That's awesome. Thank you, Alison, for sharing. Perfect. Okay. So we have 9 minutes left. This is the fastest panel I've ever experienced. So I'm going to try and squeeze in 2 more questions. One, Elizabeth, I want to direct this mostly to your end, I think. So one of the questions, or a couple that we've gotten, are just about like breaking into tech in general. I don't think necessarily specifically like software engineering or anything, but just like breaking into tech in general. Any like high level tips that you would share real quick with the women on the call?
Absolutely. So one of the biggest things is figuring out your why. I know when I walked into my first tech interview, first question I got asked, why tech? Your resume screams education. It screams teacher. Are you lost? Like, I feel like sometimes when I applied the applications, like they just wanted to interview me solely for the interview of wanting to know why this woman was applying to this company. So knowing the why will help you bridge your past life to where you want to go. So knowing why do you want to do this? My why, ever evolving, but is always related in the fact that tech is always available to everybody. And I wanted to be part of that movement. I wanted to be a part of the change to know that regardless of your zip code, where you grew up, how you identify, you can be a part of the tech movement. You just have to know what you want to do with it. So I think that's the first question, and being confident in your answer and knowing your why is the first way to break into it and really help you kind of bridge that gap. Now, it doesn't come with the fact that I got a ton of no's as well. So just knowing that no's are going to happen, and that's okay. And it all worked out for the best, but just knowing your why is the most important piece.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Appreciate that. Anything else anyone really wants to share before I dive into one last question? Cool. Okay. So I want to close things out today with just like support. Like, how can we, so I know we talked a lot about mentorship, but beyond that, how as a coworker, working with someone else on my team, how can I be supportive of other women in tech? How can they be supportive of me? How can my male coworkers be supportive of me as well? So just like, and companies in general, if there are any HR professionals on here, how can they really be supporting and helping attract women in tech? So kind of just like a general large support question. Would love to just close things out on that. Chevonne, can I go to you first today?
Yeah, absolutely. I had a boss once, and he always had these like sports related themes and meetings. And I don't know sports, right? It felt super isolating. It was only 2 women, and like everything that we did was just centered around sports. And I remember once being like, I hate being here. And I think like just even how your work culture feels, if there is something that, I mean, and this is a very simple thing that I know I'm saying, I'm just focusing on sports, but I was already feeling isolated because it was already so male dominated. And then you kind of add this other layer on. And now it's like, I really can't participate in this. Especially because I like MMA and boxing, which they mainly want to talk about like football and basketball. So I think even in your workplace, outside of work, what are the extracurricular, what are the themes, what are the things that are taking place that can make people feel kind of isolated? And with that, we find that women, not only are they mothers, but they're also like caretakers. We're in an interesting place now where a lot of women my age are also beginning to care for their parents. And so you're just finding all around that women are becoming caretakers, whether mothers or caring for their family, and also like first generation with education, just a lot of firsts and dynamics in just their daily role that they can feel very alone in that, especially having to take care of people. And so I feel like being able to have a workplace where you can at least talk about it, you don't feel isolated in these things, you don't feel alone, that maybe, my parents are Jamaican. A lot of things that I had to experience was also just me being an American, a first generation American, explaining to my mom, like, no, we don't do those kind of things. This is not what happens. This is how it's going to go. Like all of these different things that people bring into the workplace are great. Like they really do make the best environments. But we do also need to be careful with how we can also make people feel isolated based on like themes and activities that people try to pour in order to make things more communal. I'll say that.
Thank you, Chevonne. That's great. Alison, I'm going to send it to you next.
It was the question for advice to the community or to women. Sorry,
just support in general. How can women support women? Okay. How can male coworkers support women? So on and so forth.
Oh, okay. Yeah, especially for men, don't wait to be asked. Be an active advocate for diversity in all situations of your life. And it can be small things. Helping can be as simple as echoing a female on her opinion if it's overlooked, or calling attention to women in the room so they can speak. Watch for women who are overlooked, watch for women who are not included, even if it's unintentional, which happens all the time that it's unintentional, and that's okay. But we shouldn't have to ask for help. So that one's important to me. And I think just in general, it's a great practice to give everyone at a table a voice. So requiring all of the perspectives, or at least offering the opportunity, making space for the opportunity, I think that can do a lot of change. And it's just like a really small hack that can have a really big impact.
For sure. Thank you, Alison. Julia, I'll kick it to you next.
I guess it's more just team building is embracing empathy. You really need to do that for everyone. If you want to build a strong team, you want everyone to participate, just like Alison said. You want to bring in multiple opinions, multiple ideas. It goes right on back to our very first question, which is, what do women bring to the table? But everyone brings different perspectives to the table, women, men, whichever. And so we need to embrace all of that, because to solve new problems, you need new perspectives. So really embracing the conversation is really important. And that's what I hope I bring to the table. I hope my team does that too, and then go out and do that with others. So embrace empathy and listen. So those are important things to do.
Empathy and listening. Really great summary on that, Julia. Really love that. Elizabeth, I'll let you close us out with your thoughts on how to support women in tech.
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest things that we can do as a woman in tech is support other women in tech, empower each other, build each other up, really breaking the stereotype of like women just like fighting each other and like, I'm going to get this role, and like this like catty behavior of, you know, what generations before did. It's like, no, I'm going to fight to the top and I'm going to take everybody down with me. And really knowing that like you're as strong as the person next to you, and really making sure that you're empowering each other. If somebody on my team needs help, like we're all jumping in. Like this isn't a like somebody failed or you missed a deadline. It doesn't matter. Like let's all just do this together, and really knowing that as a woman, you have that ability to empower another woman. You have the ability to empower a girl that's looking up to you because it's like, oh my gosh, I see somebody in tech that looks like me. And just knowing that you have that ability just by simply saying like, how can I help? What do you need help with? Let's just get this done.
Awesome. Wow. You all were wonderful. I'm sorry we don't have more time. I know there were a lot of other questions that we couldn't get to. But thank you everyone for joining us. I know I'm like spinning my wheels about how Purpose Jobs can continue to support women in tech. So I might have some things that I share in the follow-up newsletter, in the follow-up email tomorrow. But thank you everyone for coming. We really appreciate it. If you are in Columbus, we do have a happy hour tomorrow night. Would love to see you there. Otherwise, you can stay in touch by making sure to subscribe to the Purpose Jobs newsletter. And yeah, we want to continue to be here as a community builder for our community, especially for our women in tech. So thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, and we'll see you next time.